Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Till Mets Do Us Part here live on Twitter, live on YouTube. And of course, if you miss any of the show, you can go ahead and watch the broadcast as soon as we're done on our YouTube channel, which is called simply Till Mets Do Us Part. And if you'd rather kick it old school, maybe tomorrow you're driving out to Thanksgiving, you want to listen to it in the car, you can definitely do that on whichever podcast platform you prefer, all courtesy of the Chop Sports Network. John Sapanaro, Matt Ibby Ibanez. Ibby, we were off last week. It was mostly my fault. I was in Florida. I was doing a ton of stuff for work. Couldn't get to it. We tried to make the show work, but it could not happen. But I am happy to be back doing this show with you again. How you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good, John. It's I think our headline kind of says it all. We got a couple of things we can talk about, but the stove's been really cold. And, this morning, I think it was Aunt Rivera, a good friend of the show from Subway to Shea, put out the retweet of, something that we mentioned before. And that was, if there was one thing that we were able to bring from the lockout was the mad dash of free agency that happened and all the things that were trying to get done and the shot in the arm that it gave baseball, where they were the talk of the town and they were talking Twitter and talk of just the sports world in general because of everything that was going on. And now it's just, you're getting little things here and there, no big players yet. It's probably going to bleed into, maybe the first, second week of December, then finally into the new year. So it's crawling along. I think we got a little bit spoiled from last year, but I think it's something that should become a little bit more and more of the norm. They should try and figure out a way that they can create some excitement for people when it comes to this, when it comes to the winter meetings and free agency and all this stuff, because every other sport, they have the excitement. They have the, it's going to start here. Here's the signing period, like all these different things, tampering periods, whatever. It's excitement for basketball. It's excitement for football. Baseball could really use it. It was great last year, and hopefully they can figure something out going forward, but it's Major League Baseball, so I'm not going to hold my breath.
No, you shouldn't. It sucks. Honestly, it sucks. Last year with the lockout was the worst thing in the world, right? Like the lockout was the worst thing we've seen since the work stoppage. Like I understand how bad the lockout was, but like you said, the byproduct was we got a free agency frenzy, the likes of which we have not seen in a very long time. I don't want to say ever, because it used to be there were a flurry of things during the winter meetings, a flurry of things sometimes during the GM meetings and all this stuff. So there were exceptions to that. But as we've gotten further and further into the way baseball is run in the modern time, players want a lot of money and they should get as much money as they possibly can. Organizations don't necessarily want to dole out those deals, or they want to wait and see and try and all this stuff. So I've got an issue. I've got an issue with the way baseball is run right now. I've got an issue with the fact that they don't just jump into, a free agent period. I think there should be a free agent signing period. I think you should be able to make trades all off season. I think that's how it works in most of the sports. You can make trades. It's all good. But I think there should be a window of time from X date to X date where you can sign free agents, and that is it. And then maybe after that point, you have to wait until, after spring training starts or something. Because obviously, if there's a guy out there like Aaron Judge who wants a ton of money, look, he'll sign. They would get it done. But if there's a guy like Judge, and it's tricky. I think if you wait till after the start of spring training, now all of a sudden it's like, look, you're incentivizing this guy, especially if he's going to go to a new organization, to get this thing done early. So, I think there's a way to have it carry over where you can still sign guys in spring, but most of the big guys are going to want to know where they're going before that happens. So the cold stove is alive and well. It sucks. It's boring. I wish there was something to talk about. Stevie Mack in the comments. John, you finally have a real QB starting for you on Sunday. Yes, I am decked out head to toe in all of my New York Jets stuff. Why? Because we just recorded a special episode of the Jets podcast not 15 minutes ago, because Zach Wilson got benched. Mike White is going to lead the team on Sunday. So I didn't even have time to change. I literally got up and had a quick pee break, got some more coffee in my Jets mug. And so it looks like I'm doing the wrong show, Ibby, but I'm here. I'm ready to talk Mets baseball. Enough of the stuff with the Jets. Look, let's talk a little bit about Buck Showalter. I know it's old news now, but you and I haven't had the chance to talk about it. Buck Showalter wins Manager of the Year. That was at number 4 for him now in his illustrious career. So congratulations to Buck. Well deserved, man. I think it was Buck and everybody else. I thought it was Buck's award to lose.
Yeah, when we talked about it last time when the award wasn't given out yet, a thing that I highlighted was the simple fact that it was the stability. It was the culture change. It was everything that a Mets team had lacked over the last handful of years. The stupidity of you know, batting out of order and slumps that they couldn't get out of because
I forgot they did that.
Yeah. I'm sorry to bring it up, but it was stupid things like that for me this year when I was watching this team, I knew that there was look, we both know and fans alike know that September wasn't the month that they thought it would be, but at the same time, there was never really a time throughout the season where the team got into such a funk that you didn't think that they can get out of it in the sense of like a giant losing streak or all these things. Because when you have someone at the helm like Buck being able to right the ship and be able to stop a 2-3 game skid, which was very rare throughout the season, just seeing that. And then like we talked about, the biggest thing was being plus whatever it was, 25 in comparison to the previous year's win total. It goes a long way. And I think that he commanded a lot of respect in that locker room. And we finally saw guys become, better leaders. And you saw what Francisco Lindor said about him that night when Buck won, how much, he meant to him as, from the ball player perspective. And we've heard that from other players as well, who love the guy. So clearly he carries a lot of stock and a lot of merit within the clubhouses that he's been in. Hence why he's won the award 4 times. And I agree with you. I think it was him and the rest of the guys. Even though, look, the Braves and the Dodgers, hell of a season for both of them. But I just think when you look in the totality of everything from the previous year to now as well, I think it was Buck and it was always him.
Yeah, I think that's the factor. And I said this before the award was announced as well. I think the 25 or 28, whatever it was, game swing from the year before is the difference. Look, the Braves won a World Series last year with that manager. The Dodgers have been consistently the best team in the National League for 5 years, 6 years, and so, they're there. And it's not to say that makes them deserve the award any less. I do think the only caveat to that would have been if the Dodgers broke the regular season win record, I think then you probably have to give it to Dave Roberts, but they didn't. They fell a little bit short, and it is what it is. So I think for me, the deal breaker, the tiebreaker was, Buck having the team finish around 30 games different, than where they were the year before. And like you said, there's a lot of BS, batting out of order, the Carlos Beltran fiasco, Louis Rojas, was he ready for the job, not ready for the job? Obviously, Mickey Callaway is just a full-around garbage person. Everything that they've been through, even going back to Terry Collins, it turned out to be a really good manager for the Mets over the long haul. But, when Terry Collins was hired, he was looked at as sort of a stopgap. Then he made it to that World Series, and all of a sudden he bought himself more leeway, which he deserved. But it's Buck and everybody else. I mean, you talk about Buck, he's in the line of great Mets managers, and we've had a lot. It's Buck, it's Bobby Valentine, it's Casey, it's Gil. Buck Davey is right there. Davey, thank you. Oh my God. But it's Buck's right there with any of them. And so, I think Buck deserved the award. So congratulations to him. And I guess we've said all we can say about that, but we wanted to react to it. Look, the first one I want to bring up is a curious one. Again, because we don't have much to talk about in terms of actual moves happening. You know what? No, I'm gonna derail it. Let's just go off the rails really quick, mostly because I want to talk about it. Your thoughts on the story that was, and the story that wasn't, and then the story that was with Andy Martino and the collusion, and then I knew you were going to hang your head on this one. We have to talk about it. Like,
no, I get it.
The biggest frustrating part for me, and I tweeted it out yesterday, was, Andy Martino says this thing about like the Yankees aren't going to go after Judge. The Mets aren't going to go after Judge out of respect for the Yankees, right? Which we all know is a bullshit, because why wouldn't they go after one of the best players in baseball who fits their team like a glove, right? That doesn't make any sense. But then you also look at the fact that he turns around and not 2 weeks later says the Mets or the Yankees are going to go after DeGrom. So it's like, okay. So and Nimmo. So the Mets have to respect the Yankees, but the Yankees don't have to respect them back. And of course, you find out like a couple minutes after that second article comes out, it's probably a day, that the collusion case that the MLB was looking into was nonsense. Now look, we already knew it was going to be nonsense. We already knew that was going to get thrown out, but like, the funny part to me is that Martino's gonna Martino. Like, Ibby, he basically refuted his own article and no one made him do it. Like, if you're gonna sit there and you're gonna write something as direct as the Mets will not pursue Aaron Judge out of respect for the Yankees, the MLB is going to open up a case about it because they're like, we got to make sure nothing fishy's going on here. And then before the MLB's results of this case come out, however much of a farce, he's like, oh, but the Yankees are going to go after Nimmo and DeGrom. It's like, well, dude, you just unproved, like, either both stories are BS, one is BS, but like, you just refuted your own article. The guy's an absolute clown, and it's just fun to talk about him because he's an idiot.
Well, yes, he is an absolute, it's an absolute clown show whenever he tweets or speaks or just tries to put everything out there when it comes to his sources or, his one source or whoever the hell it is, Jeff Wilpon. But regardless, I put out a tweet a couple days ago that got a little bit of traction. I simply said Mets fans need to just learn to ignore Martino. It's a waste of time, and engagement with him gives him what he wants. Be patient and wait for news from an actual person of merit. And, wait. It's because we're in such a boring time, and like we talk about the cold stove, and not a lot's going on. People want to latch on to the smallest of things to try and run with, just to create conversation because they want to talk about their team. I understand that, but at the same time, when you're feeding into someone like Martino, you get things that happen like this, where it's like, why? This brings it back to my point in the beginning where, like, I'm never going to trust Major League Baseball to do something right because we're opening up an investigation on something that has to do with a report from Andy freaking Martino, where everybody on Mets Twitter knows that the guy is a clown, but the MLB is going to say, hey, this might be a legit story here. Let's investigate this. It's like, no, he's an ass. It's not true. You're going to waste your time. And then sure enough, it ends up coming out, oh, no collusion, nothing to see here, just an article written out of place. Yeah, no shit, we knew that. Everyone knew that except you. So I can't stand the fact that people just continuously feed into him and give him what he wants, because that's what SNY is, unfortunately. They feed into clickbait and they do all this nonsense because they want the engagement, and they get it because, the guy's an ass and people react to it because they get angry. It's the same thing that happens with the Skip Baylesses of the world. That's what, Stephen A. Smith, that's what journalism has become. That's what social media has brought for sports, which is the worst thing, which is why I think a lot of people search out for, honesty and straightforwardness. And that's why I think that some of those people are starting to, fall back a little bit, but still it dominates everything because those people got paid, and people that are in this job, in this line of work, they see that that's what gets people paid. If they keep doing it, maybe it'll happen for them. And that's the sad part. But it was a ridiculous thing. It never came across as genuine. I never believed it. Majority of people never believed it. And it's just funny to me that the MLB would take a report from, Andy Martino serious. But it's over with. Move on from him. And I'll just continuously reiterate, whenever he puts something out, in one ear, out the other, wait for the likes of Rosenthal, wait for the likes of Jeff Passan, wait for the likes of, hell, I'd listen to Nightingale over Martino. Okay, Nightingale's a joke too, but I'd rather listen to him over Martino. Heyman is a complete clown with everything that he does. Don't get me started on him, because I got a whole can of worms that I can open on him when it comes to DeGrom and everything, but I'd rather listen to him over Martino. Okay, but let Andy Martino rest, that freaking zero that he is. We spoke on it. We had to get it out there because it is a story. It's about our team. I understand, but he is an idiot. And that's
I think, it's funny. Everybody watching this right now, of course, this is Till Mets Do Us Part, live on Twitter, live on YouTube, which is where you can catch us every Wednesday, right around 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And of course, if you don't have the opportunity to watch us live, which is the best way to interact with the show, you can always watch the broadcast as soon as we're done over on our YouTube channel, which is appropriately called Till Mets Do Us Part, or you can check us out as an audio podcast starting tomorrow morning over on whichever podcast platform you choose to listen, all courtesy of the Chop Sports Network. It's funny. I was just talking about this on the Jets show because I recorded it just a few minutes ago. And my biggest beef is, you mentioned the Skip Baylesses of the world. You mentioned the Stephen A's of the world. I mentioned Colin Cowherd. Like, the thing is, those people are like living, breathing clickbait.
Yes.
That's their whole shtick. So you can choose to not interact with them. Like, I don't have to watch Skip or Stephen A. or Colin. I don't have to listen to their show. Yeah, and hopefully nobody should, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, you don't have to listen to it. You don't have to watch it. You don't have to seek them out. Their show is an opinion editorial thing where they say outlandish stuff and they try to get people to talk about it. The frustrating part with Martino, and less so now because he's more of an MLB insider, those air quotes very, very heavy, but he was a beat reporter for the team. And I always have an issue, and this is what I was saying on the Jets show, is that I have an issue with these beat reporters that want to step out and make dumb jokes. They want to step out and stir the pot. It's like, dude, your job, I'm not saying that you're not a little bit of an investigative reporter, because you are. If you hear something in the locker room, you want to run with it. Like, that's part of your job. I get that. You know, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. They're not fans like we are, but they need to just do it in a more fair and balanced way rather than come out there and tweeting out jokes, half-formed, dumb jokes with no real punchline. And I'm near and dear to that because I'm a comic and I know what it takes to put out something that's funny, whether it's in a tweet or in a video or whatever. And these guys just come out and they do it and it's not funny and it doesn't move the needle and it doesn't, like, it's just dumb. And so for me, it's the beat reporters, because if you're a fan of the team, that's who you're following, right? Those are the people that you want to get your information from. So it's frustrating when talking about the Jets, the Rich Siminis of the world, or the Brian Costellos, or Manish Mehta, who was an absolute disaster person. You know, when you're talking about these guys, that's when I get frustrated. And I think that's the way that Martino frustrates me. And that's the way Jon Heyman frustrates me, because they claim to be, I just know stuff. I'm an insider. It's like, dude, no, you're not. Okay. Come off of it. I don't want to get too much in the weeds on this, but like, you know, what Jon Heyman said back to Danielle Sepulveris, who's been on this show, great Mets fan, you know, knowledgeable, and also just a human being who deserves respect. She was like, hey, DeGrom has said in multiple press conferences that he wants to be here. And he's like, oh, so you heard DeGrom say it one time and that makes it true? It's like, first of all, it was more than one time. Second of all, he then says in that tweet, he's like, well, you know, I just saying that I think he's unhappy with his contract. Obviously, he's unhappy with his contract, man. Otherwise, he wouldn't have opted out. He's watching a guy who's got all the accolades that he does make $20 million more, or whatever it is, $15 million more than him.
At an older age.
At an older age. So, of course, he's going to opt out. That's not what you said. What you said is you don't think he likes it here. That's what you said when we have tape of him like, no, I want to be here. I want to be here. I want to be here. Now, look, a lot of times athletes lie and they're disingenuous, and I understand that part of it too. But if we're going to go on tape of someone saying something versus Jon Heyman's wild speculation on something, I'm just going to take something at face value. I'm going to go with Jacob deGrom, who's been here his whole career, saying, no, I'd like to be a Met. I want to be a Met. I like being here. What reason would he have to not want to be here? So, you know, whether or not he stays, that remains to be seen. I think he does, but it's just, man, it's just more BS from these guys, just shoveling shit and just seeing what sticks, and it's gross. So anyway, let's move on from the beat reporters. Let's talk about some stuff. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about Cody Bellinger, and I think that's a good baseball topic to segue to. Cody Bellinger, former MVP, since that season has looked progressively more and more and more lost. Your thoughts on Cody Bellinger? Would you take a flyer on him? Would you have any interest in him on the Mets?
Cody Bellinger is one of the most interesting cases in a long time for me, just in the sense of this is a guy that just got non-tendered after he won the MVP of the National League 3 years ago. Like like just saying that is absolutely insane to me, that someone can fall off that quickly. But you know, when it comes to a hitter and it comes to the shoulder, like it can change the way your approach is at the plate, how you hit, you know, point of contact, a lot of things saps your power. It's a very interesting case to me because I look at it and I go, well, it makes sense from the Dodgers standpoint because they don't want to pay the $20 million that he was owed. They let him go. It opens them up for the opportunity to be in the Aaron Judge sweepstakes or somebody else that they might want to sign. And you know, when I look at it, I go, if the Dodgers don't want him, one of the smartest teams in baseball, that's a big red flag. Okay. But if you're telling me, you know, well, maybe it's just because they want Aaron Judge instead, I get that. Aaron Judge is better.
Right. Or the money, right? Because let's say
right.
he has to sign for $8 million, that's different than 20.
Right. So I understand it from that sense. But this is the interesting thing to me. I think that Mets fans, a lot of them have hopped on the idea, specifically on Twitter, that he would make a lot of sense. Oh, you bring him in. It's a flyer. He wants the 1-year deal, which makes sense to me. He wants the 1-year deal. You take the flyer. Maybe he can be like your fourth outfielder, DH, this and that. And I see that and I go, the guy's still fantastic as an outfielder in center. Fantastic. Gold Glove caliber. So he never lost anything in terms of that part of his game, right? It's the bat that worries you. So when I look at him, I go, I wonder, look, could he fit on this team as a starting center fielder if you lose Brandon Nimmo? I think he could. I'm not going to say he can't. I think he could. But I also look at it and I go, this is a guy that's clearly with the mindset that I want a 1-year deal. I want a prove-it deal. And when I see things like that, specifically from a guy that has had trouble offensively, the number one thing I'm going to look to is, obviously it's money. That's obviously number one. But I'm always going to look at the park factor as well. Okay, I look at the park factor and I go, okay, where does he make sense park-wise? And would he risk going to the AL as opposed to staying in the NL because he knows the NL pitching? And we all know that there is a learning curve when you go from the NL to the AL or vice versa when it comes to getting used to the pitching, because you're used to seeing certain guys over and over. Then you got to try something new. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get that groove. And if he only wants the 1-year deal, I think he wants to start right from jump. So in that case, if the Mets didn't get Nimmo, he does make sense in that world because he stays in the NL. But I also think the park plays a big factor, and I saw it this morning, and I think it was the first thing that came to my mind. Obviously, the Rockies were interested in Brandon Nimmo. I think Cody Bellinger makes a ton of sense for Colorado, mainly because they want a left-handed outfield bat. The setting itself could help him create some offense if he does get healthy with that shoulder. And I say Colorado so much for him because if he goes there and say bats 280, hits 30 home runs, drives in 90, whatever, and has that bounce back type of year, people wouldn't be able to categorize him and say, oh, that's only because of Coors Field, because the guy has an MVP on his track record. It's like, well, maybe he rediscovered himself and now he can go out and cash out. I think he wants the 1-year deal. I think the park is going to play a big deal. I don't think winning has anything to do with this guy right now. I don't. I think he wants to better himself in an environment that he can get those numbers up to try and cash in. Can that happen with the Mets? Of course it can. And look, they're moving in right field again because of what they're building out there. So maybe that works for him. So I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a bad idea to want Cody Bellinger. I think that it's wrong for people to just assume that he would be willing to be a fourth outfielder, be a guy off the bench, be a spot DH, or platooning with someone, because the guy is still a hell of a center fielder. I think he's really got to prove that he can still hit. Could he fit here? Yes, he could. Do I think he's going to end up here? I don't think he is.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of stuff that you said really, I think, rings true. And I think the biggest thing is that he doesn't make sense as a fourth outfielder. It doesn't make sense for him, and it doesn't make sense for the Mets. It makes sense for a team to take a flyer on a player like him for a much more discounted number than he was going to get with the Dodgers. He's not going to get 20 million. He's probably going to get half that, maybe less. I would say he's in the $6 to $10 million range on a 1-year deal, maybe. And that's if there's people vying for his services. That's what I would see. Because I think if he's going to get 20, if the Dodgers thought he was going to get 20, they would have just kept him for the 20. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think the market is dictating Cody Bellinger getting $20 million on a 1-year deal. He needs to reestablish his value. I think you're 100% right on the winning is not everything. The guy's got a World Series. The guy won an MVP. The guy is trying to rebuild his MLB career. And I think then you have to just go somewhere where you can play. Being a fourth outfielder on the Mets is meaningless. Being a fourth outfielder on the Yankees is meaningless. Pick your team. Fourth outfielder on the Astros. All these good teams, right? No, it doesn't matter. Being a fourth outfielder and a DH on the Braves, no. None of those things make any sense for Cody Bellinger right now because he's trying to avoid at what is he, 27 years old? You
He's
know,
young, yeah.
He's trying to avoid being a flash in the pan. He can go with his skill set, he can be a fourth outfielder for the next 5 years. He's got pop, he plays great defense. He can still go do that if this year blows up in his face. So he needs this year to be a quality year. So I agree with you. I don't think he's coming to the Mets. The only path I see is if the Mets try on Judge and they don't get him and Nimmo goes elsewhere. Now you're talking about, look, you said this great, like so astutely a couple weeks ago. You were like, look, the thing with Brandon Nimmo is I don't want the Mets to get stuck holding the bag. It's hot potato or it's musical chairs. And what if they're out one outfielder and now they don't have a center fielder? They got to go get Kiermaier or something. Look, if it comes down to that, give me Cody Bellinger. I'll roll the dice. Cody Bellinger batting 7th or 8th, playing Gold Glove defense in center field, hoping he rediscovers himself if we lose out on the big center fielders, either our own or Aaron Judge. Then he makes a ton of sense, but only until then. And, you know, you might see a team that says, look, we're not going to sign Brandon Nimmo for 6 or 7 years. We know that. We're not going to sign Judge for $280, $300 million, whatever he's going to make. We know that. So we're going to jump and we're going to go get Cody Bellinger on a 1-year deal, even if we overpay. Let's say a team jumps out and says, Cody Bellinger, 1 year, $15 million. It's only $5 million less than he was making. It might be an overpay, but it's only a 1-year commitment. I could see a team doing that kind of early, right? Where, you know, you're not left waiting for a guy like Cody. So I don't think he's going to wind up on the Mets. He only makes sense on the Mets if they wind up missing out on the other guys. Stevie Mack says, as cool as it would be to have Cody for a year, I feel like he's going to want an easier market to play, AKA not New York, LOL. I actually don't know if the New York market plays a factor simply because he's coming from LA, but I do get the point that Stevie's trying to make, Ibby, in that, look, LA is a big market, but it's not the pressure cooker that New York is. And if he comes here, even coming here off of 3 down years, you know what the rhetoric's going to be? Former MVP Cody Bellinger struggling with the Mets. So I do think, for me, I don't think that's the biggest thing, but I do think Stevie makes a good point.
Do you think, because obviously you're out in LA, do you feel that, and knowing the New York market as well, do you feel that the LA market and how they, you know, how the team is covered, do you think that, because baseball here is nonstop, like someone can call into the fan or they can call anything and they can talk baseball, you know, 12 months of the year, right? Is that happening in LA? Are fans that, you know, hungry for, or are they very in and out? Oh, the team's doing great. Oh yeah, I'll check it out. Oh yeah, but like, are they really going to care so much if, you know, he's not? And look, they were upset because he was a former MVP and then he just kind of disappeared. But do you think that there is a big difference in that sense? Like you just mentioned pressure cooker, but in that sense of the LA fan versus the New York fan?
You know, it's funny because I think LA fans get a bad rep. I think everybody goes, oh, Dodger Stadium is empty for the 3rd inning, and then everybody leaves in the 7th inning. It's like, okay, yeah, there's a little bit of that happens.
In LA too.
What happened?
Well, I said there's a lot of traffic in LA too.
That's the thing. It's difficult to get there. It's difficult to get out. And so, look, I wouldn't do it, but I understand if you go there and it's a Tuesday night and the Dodgers are playing the Diamondbacks and they're losing by 10, you're going to leave in the 7th inning. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to stay there. Why would you want to sit in all that traffic trying to leave when you can just leave early and be like, I'm done with this, you know? So again, that's not the type of fan that I am, but I think that does give them a bad rep. You see in the playoff runs, the World Series runs, like that place is packed. There are fervent Dodger fans. There always have been. I don't know if baseball is as much of a 12 month a year sport out here. It's weird because the weather's nice and it, you know, just in the back of your mind, baseball is kind of ever present. Like I play softball in December. I play softball all year long because you can with the weather. So you would think it would be a little bit more evergreen, but it isn't. I think part of that is because, look, the Lakers have been really good historically and for a long time recently. The Rams won a Super Bowl. The Chargers are good. Both of those teams are new and hot and fresh, and they play in a brand new, beautiful stadium right here in basically in Inglewood. The LAFC just won the Super Bowl of the MLS. So that's a big thing. You know, the Kings have been pretty good. So, you know, you look at all of that and it's just like, the sports landscape in New York has hit a little bit of a doldrums. They're only just now coming out of it with the Jets being good again and the Giants being good again. Whether they're paper tigers or not, they're good. They're relevant. The Mets and the Yankees have been good at the same time now. They're good. They're relevant. You know, the Knicks are still the Knicks, but everybody keeps holding on to hope that they're going to be good. And I guess they've shown improvement from the absolute abomination that they've been over the last, 20 some odd years. And then, look, it hasn't worked out for the Nets, but they're flashy. They have big names. The Rangers have rebuilt this thing in a real meaningful way. And then you look at the Devils and the Islanders, much smaller fan bases, sure, but again, fervent fan bases. If you live in New Jersey, you love the Devils. If you live out on the island, you love the Islanders, come what may. A lot of us in the tri-state area might not care as much about those teams because they're not in our faces. But if you're in one of those fan groups, you really care about them. So I think that the coverage is a little different from a fan's perspective with the Dodgers, but I don't think it's any less intense, man. You're talking about media market. Like, there's going to be different kinds of scrutiny on the East Coast. New York, Boston, Philadelphia, they're in your face. They have East Coast attitudes where they're like, listen, let me tell, why did you suck? You don't get that in LA. The reporters aren't going to do it. Most of the fans aren't going to do it. But in terms of media market size, you think there's less cameras in your face playing in Hollywood than there is in New York City? It's two sides of the same coin. So from that perspective, I think Cody's used to it. And again, similar to why I mentioned the Islanders and the Devils, he's not coming from Anaheim. The Angels want to be LA as much as they possibly can. The rebrand to Los Angeles Angels, then Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim and all that stuff, it's not. It's Orange County. Orange County might as well be the moon compared to LA. So, it's just a totally different vibe. So he's coming from the Dodgers, and I think the real LA media market makes a difference. And so I think he's prepared for it. I think he could play in New York or Boston or Philly, one of those East Coast, Chicago, one of those pressure cooker cities, because I don't think here in LA he's been given any free passes. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think that's well, because I'm always curious when it comes to the the LA market, and you always hear like, oh, they're fair weather fans. If they're good, they're there. If they stink, the place is empty. And that can be said for a lot of places too. But yeah, I was just curious in that sense of how a player might fare in that sense, because like you said, New York is very much in your face. Why did you suck? This and that. Why were you terrible on that 2nd June on that Thursday against the Marlins, and you struck out in the 7th? Like, that's the way fans are here because they're so diehard in that sense. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot of there's been a lot of bad, not as much good here in New York. So people are always on things because they want to see better. And LA is coming off of a lot of winning, so I can understand why some of their attention is a little bit sprayed out.
Well, you know what it is too, and then we'll put this to bed. We'll head into the break. We got a great comment from Stevie Mack that I'm not ignoring. I just wanted to save till the second half. And I know we've got some stuff, some chatter came up in the Facebook group that you want to bring to my attention. I'm not on Facebook, so this will all be news to me. The one thing I'll say about Bellinger, to put this conversation to bed, is I think the difference is he wouldn't be on scholarship here. I think the way Bellinger has gotten a pass here in LA is that he won an MVP.
Right.
For this team. And it's kind of similar, but not exactly the same as, what's his name? Kung Fu Panda, Sandoval.
Oh, Paulo Sandoval.
Yeah, Sandoval did so much great stuff with the Giants, and then he went to Boston, and he learned real quick, like, bro, we're Boston. We don't care how many World Series you won with San Francisco. We don't care how many clutch hits you got for the Giants. Yeah. We're Boston, and you suck. And we're going to tell you suck. Yeah. Like, I think that would be the difference of, like, look, Cody Bellinger was a cult hero here in Los Angeles. He was their guy. He was their homegrown, second-generation kid, winning MVPs, hitting home runs, being, like, very LA, too. He's like, he's like 8'1", 108 pounds. Like, he's just got this like vibe about him that's super LA. And I think people bought into that. Whereas I think if he came to the Mets, I think there'd be a little of like, dude, we don't care that you won an MVP. We're willing to love you, but you're going to have to come here and not suck because you're replacing Brandon Nimmo. And also we didn't get Judge. Like, I think that's going to be, a little bit of the attitude of like, we don't need you to be Judge. We don't even need you to be MVP Cody Bellinger, because Brandon Nimmo certainly is not an MVP candidate to this point in his career, but we're going to need you to not bat 180. We're going to need you, if he hit 240 and hit 38 bombs and drove in 90 to 110, I don't think anybody's going to be mad. No, I don't think people are going to go, oh, but the batting average. They're going to be like, this guy's productive, plus he's playing Gold Glove center field. So, but I think they're going to look at it and go, dude, you didn't win an MVP here. You didn't win a World Series here. There is no scholarship. There is no honeymoon for you, and I think that would be the major difference. So with that said, let's take a quick break, just a 10-second ad spot. We'll be right back talking more New York Mets and MLB offseason. The cold stove is in full swing. If you're watching us live, don't worry. It is just a 10-second ad spot. John Sapanaro, Matt Ibanez will be right back. Yo, I told you we were going to be back just like that. John Sapanaro, Matt Ibanez with Till Mets Do Us Part, live on Twitter, live on YouTube. It is the best way to interact with the show in real time. Of course, your comments come in. We can answer them, your questions, all that fun stuff. But if you don't have the opportunity to watch us live, you can catch the entire show as soon as we end the broadcast over on our YouTube channel. Or you can listen to the audio version of the show starting tomorrow morning, wherever you get your podcast, all courtesy of the Chop Sports Network. Ibby, I want to jump in and give Stevie Mack some credit for this. I haven't seen it, but he said it wasn't reported here, but in Japan, they came out saying the Mets offered Senga a 4-year, $60 million deal. No idea if it's legit or not, though. I haven't seen it. I looked at some points during the show when this comment first came in. I haven't seen anything substantiating that or refuting it. I will just want to take this at face value, saying for a person coming over from Japan, especially a pitcher, this is the kind of deal that guys would get. So if there is any truth to it, you look at, the Cespedes deal when he came over from Cuba with the A's. You look at some of the other pitchers that have come over. Guys don't come over from other leagues, other countries, even if they're superstars, and get $100 million deal off the rip. So, because there is a little bit of risk. So I think this deal is ballpark what the Mets or any team looking to sign him would probably need to do.
Well, especially when they changed the rules with the whole posting fees. Like I remember when Daisuke Matsuzaka came over, like the whole thing was the posting fee, which was like through the roof that they had to pay, and then a contract on top of it. But once that changed, you're right, the contracts haven't been as crazy. So when I see 4 for $60, I think that can be in the ballpark. One of my, which I'll bring up in a little bit, one of my off seasons that I came up with for the Mets did include Kodai Senga as a potential signing, and I had that 4 years, $85 million. So it's not that far off in terms of what I thought that the deal might be. So I think he can range anywhere from 60 to 90 million in total over a 4-year period, depending on how, you hear the likes of the Mets and the Red Sox and the Padres as potentials. And he has said that he wants to be on a team that's contending. So, the Mets are very much right there. And, deals like this are kind of up Billy Epler's alley in the sense of, handling the likes of Shohei Ohtani and other deals that he's made in the past. So I can definitely see this as a potential because I think that the Mets are really going to be focusing on the pitching more than people realize. And, I'll kind of go into this now, then it's going to bleed right into that Facebook question that I wanted to ask you. But, I really had it where I remember I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that I was going to do multiple off seasons as to what the Mets could end up doing and how they're going to spend their money. And I came up with one, and I've been holding on to it, and I haven't done other ones because as I see, this cold stove, if you will, not really developing just yet, maybe things will change. But the more I think about it, like we talk about how Aaron Judge makes sense, but I've said on here, I don't think he's coming here, right? And if you don't get that type of power, how are you going to better your team? And I said, and my thought process was, I think this team is really going to double down on its pitching and at the same time also bring Brandon Nimmo back. So what I ended up doing, I know you don't like that, but what I ended up doing.
It's not that I don't like that. I just think they need more power. And the Cody Bellinger conversation, sorry to interrupt, the Cody Bellinger conversation becomes a lot more palatable to me if the Mets don't get Judge and they say, look, we're going to take a flyer on Bellinger. It's a 1-year commitment. We don't want to go 6-7 years on Brandon Nimmo. But the Bellinger move would have to come with another offensive player. So if you told me you're going big money deal on Trey Turner or Carlos Correa, and then you're going 1-year flyer on Cody Bellinger, you're letting Nimmo walk, but you're also bringing back Jake and you're getting another starting pitcher, whether it's Senga or you're making a trade or something. Like now all of a sudden with that combination, sign me up for Cody Bellinger for a year in center field, because he'll give you some of that power potential. Now I would say it's medium risk because it's only 1 year, but there's a high reward potential for if he ever figures it back out again. So, that's an off-season plan I just pulled out of my ass just now. But to your point, I'm not mad about Brandon Nimmo. I do think they need more power, man. I think they need more. Even a guy like Trey Turner who offers like slightly more. I would say slightly more power than Brandon Nimmo, because Nimmo's hit 20 in a season, hasn't he? I think one time he hit 22 bombs. Somewhere in that range, but he's more of like a 12 to 16 guy. Whereas you could see Trey Turner hitting, 20, 25 in a year. That's a big difference when you're looking at really Alonso as the only power threat. And, then you go down to Lindor, who, he hit, I think, as many as 38, but I don't think Lindor's a 38 homer guy. I think he's more of a 28 homer guy. So anyway.
Yeah. So the main thing I was getting at was, when it came to that build that I did, and I titled it the Run It Back off season, which was, the focus of it was being, bringing back Edwin Diaz, Brandon Nimmo, Jacob deGrom. And, I think people also get lost in the fact of, those three names are still three of the top 12 free agents this year, that if anyone signed those three, they'd be ecstatic that they got those three, where it was, if you want to point. Right. If you want to consider Aaron Judge a center fielder, then the number 2 center fielder, the number 1 pitcher, and the number 1 closer or relief pitcher, anybody would sign up for that, right? But the point I'm making is, when I did all that and I tried to, figure out potential contracts, the Mets ended up getting to a payroll with those three being the focus, and I had Senga in there as well as the other big one at 4 years, 85. You're still looking at a team that was going to have their payroll, which we've talked about on here, climb all the way up to $347 million. And that's because you had to fill in these spots while also finishing out the rotation, filling the bullpen, looking at the bench, potential trades, getting rid of contracts. Like, I did all of that, and it still came out to $347 million because there's a lot of holes on this team. So how you choose to spend that, I looked at it as, well, I think they're going to double down on the pitching if they don't get the power. So basically, if you're not in on Judge and you don't want to give away prospects, then you're going to have to figure out how you're going to build this team. So I said, well, I think they're going to bring Jake back, which the more I see a shrinking market, the more I see him coming back to the Mets. I do think. Yeah,
let Rodon sign with Texas.
I think that
gives us all the leverage.
Jake comes back. I think that Senga is an idea that I think can happen, and then you plug him in, and then I say Brandon Nimmo because I think that contract would be look, it really depends on what happens with the total number of the Jake contract. And I know it's Steve Cohen, he's got all the money in the world, but I still don't think he's going to spend, 135, 140 on Jake, and then throw $300 million at Trey Turner, and then $85 million at Senga, and still fill out the rest of the team. Like, you got to think about filling out everything. And I think if one thing that they showed last year, they did put a focus on depth and filling out an entire team to withstand the rigors of a season of 162. So I think that's interesting, and I'm going to bleed this into my next question, which was from our Facebook community, which garnered a lot. Yes, go ahead. What do you got?
Before you go there, I just want to make, is this about Senga, or is it more of an overarching?
This is more of a would you rather.
Okay, so before you do that, I just want to throw in my quick comments on Senga, just with regards to the fact that the Mets are, regardless of what else they do, this Mets team with this ownership is very well positioned to roll the dice on a player like that, because what's going to happen is if he's even partially what they think he is in Japan, or what he has been in Japan, rather, the deal is going to be a quote unquote bargain. And we never saw the Mets play in those sandboxes with the Wilpons because they were afraid. Like the Mets, when Cespedes was a free agent, the Oakland A's go out and get him. The Mets could have used Cespedes off the rip from, when he came over from Cuba. And so the Mets were afraid to play in that market because, look, their scouting was not as good as it was before. Their analytics was non-existent, right? And you look at a team like Oakland that has all of that stuff in spades, and that's what gives them any kind of ability to play in the major leagues. All of that is fine. All of that is noted.
Buyer's remorse, too, from Kaz Matsui years prior.
Sure, exactly. That's a great example. And, but again, the Mets were never playing at the top end. They should have went after Hideki Matsui, not Kaz Matsui. You know what I mean? Like, right. and the Wilpons, though, have shown we've been burned before, we're not doing it. If part of it is financially because they're locked in and they don't have the money, but part of it is also because they have this weird, like, you fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me mentality, where it's like, look, they went out and they signed Jason Bay. And they were like, that's it. We can't go get another free agent. Like the next free agent outfielder they signed was Michael Kadire to like a no money deal, a 2-year deal. They wasted a pick. Yeah, but like they were sitting there like, we can't go down this Jason Bay road again. It's like, well, you wouldn't have had to go down the Jason Bay road if you went down the Matt Holliday road, but you didn't want to spend the money on Matt Holliday. Spend the money on Jason Bay. Like it's just like it's a snowball effect. It's dominoes, and you can follow the bouncing ball. So I think now with Steve Cohen and all his money, look, a $60 to $85 million, let's say, investment on a guy who could potentially be your ace going forward. He's only 29 years old. He's younger than Scherzer, younger than Jake. You're signing him to be your number 3. Hey, maybe he won't be your ace, but he's got high 2 upside because he certainly throws gas. He's got all the stuff you'd want. This is the time to play in that realm. So if what Stevie Mac put up is legitimate and the Mets put an offer out there, I think they're smart to do it. And I think he's somebody that we didn't talk about. We talked about a lot of trade candidates for that number 3 starter spot. But I do think that Senga makes a lot of sense. I just wanted to say that in a nutshell before we talk about other outcomes.
Absolutely. And I think Senga makes a lot of sense too, in the sense where it's just money. It's not worrying about giving up a pick.
Nope.
Because the Mets went over the tax, they're not going to get as much return when it comes to their own, offers on their own players and what they would get, or what they would have to give up in order to sign somebody else. They got to give up a higher pick. So the idea of just shelling out the cash to get, a 3 or 4 star like Senga makes sense. And I want to give a quick shout out to Daniel Wexler on Twitter, who mentioned that he had been following Senga for the last 2 years. Then he said that he feels he can fit into Major League Baseball more so as a 4 high-end 3 starter because of his walk rate and things like that. So he put out a great breakdown. If anybody follows him or not, Daniel Wexler on Twitter is a great follow for all Mets fans. And he really broke it down to give you an idea of who the player is. But I do think the way he broke it down, it makes more sense to take a risk on someone like that with that upside over the likes of, say, re-signing a Taijuan Walker. So I did like that breakdown that he gave. But if 460 is that deal, I think they're all over. I think he's going to get a little bit more, but we'll see what happens. But the one thing I had to bring up, because I saw it in the group, and it created a lot of comments. Like we got like 50 plus comments on it or whatever.
I love the controversy, man. Bring it.
I said to the poster, I was like, Rich, I'm bringing this to the pod. I got to ask John because I know he's going to have some thoughts on it, and I'm curious. You cannot mix and match. You can only have this. You can either have A, you can either have B. All right. Anyone can mix and match, obviously, but not in this case. A or B. That's it. A, you get Brandon Nimmo, Jacob deGrom. B, you get Carlos Rodon, Trey Turner. No mixing and matching. You get one or the other. Which side of the coin are you choosing?
Oh, my
mind you, the response was very strong on this one. Stronger than I thought, but the response on it was very strong in terms of what they would pick. And I want to know what you would pick.
So column A is Jacob deGrom and Brandon Nimmo. Column B is Carlos Rodon and Trey Turner.
Correct.
Man, for everybody watching this, you can see the thought process on my face. And Ibby, I'm not on Facebook. I have not seen this. And Ibby just brought this up to me in real time before when we talked, what the show is going to be about. He told me he was going to give me a question, but he didn't. I didn't want him to tell me what it was going to be because I wanted to hear it in real time. So the pauses on the podcast are legitimate. I'm thinking. My gut is give me option A. Because you guys all who listen to this, follow me on Twitter, all that stuff. You guys know how I feel about Brandon Nimmo. I like Nimmo, but I think the Mets need better. And I'd rather have Trey Turner. I've been on record on this show saying I'd rather have Turner than Nimmo. I know there's some issues with Jake, potentially, of, is he still that kind of pitcher? Is he still the best player in the galaxy? That's all fair. Rodon's really good. But I don't think that Rodon is – look, he's not the picture of health either, Rodon.
No, he's not.
So that's the thing. If you're going to give me the potential for somebody to be – okay, there's a risk factor involved. I know that Jake is going to make more money than Rodon. Mm-hmm. But Rodon's going to have a longer deal.
Correct.
So over the life of the contract, he's probably going to make more money, or you're going to be saddled with more money. Also – and this is heart, not head. To me, sometimes legacy matters. I don't think it always does. I think sometimes you need to be smart. You need to Belichick this thing. And I'm wearing the garb that shows you that I hate Belichick more than anybody in the world. But I think that sometimes
versus 1 year too late.
Yeah, exactly. He's really shrewd. Year too early instead of a year too late. So for me, I think Nimmo falls into the year too early kind of thing rather than the year too late, right? Mm-hmm. I would rather cut bait with Nimmo, not because I don't like him, but because I don't want to give him 6 or 7 years. Mm-hmm. But Jake is a legacy Met. Jake has 2 Cy Youngs here. If he doesn't get hurt, 2 years ago, he's probably got 3 Cy Youngs here. He was on a Bob Gibson-like run. He moved the mound back type of run. Man, I think
you could argue that Jake could have won 4 in a row. He won back-to-back. 2020, I could argue that the shortened season, he faced better competition in the East than Bauer did in the West. And then if he doesn't get hurt in 21, then that's 4 in a row.
Yeah, and I know if wishes were fishes, the world would be an ocean. Like I get it, but
I get it.
But I think that's all valid, man, because like I said earlier about Bellinger in a different context, like Rodon's really good. He's not Jacob deGrom. Is Rodon healthy or not? Is he challenging for 4 Cy Youngs in a row? I don't think so.
Carlos Rodon has started 30 games once in his career.
Right. So for me, man, I'm buying time here. Stevie Mack doesn't have the pressure of being on air. He goes, I might have to flip a coin for that one.
Oh, be a man, Stevie. Make a call.
There is value. Like, I don't think, here's why it's tough. I don't think there's a bad outcome, right? Like, I think injury concerns for both starting pitchers, to a lesser extent, a little bit injury concerns for both starting players. Right. Turner's a little bit healthier than Nimmo in his career, but, definitely had some injuries there. I think Turner is the marketed better player than Nimmo, but I also think deGrom is a marketed better player than Rodon, as good as they all are. So I think I'm just pushing it over the edge with legacy. I want to see Jacob deGrom come back and be, if he's not the undisputed best pitcher in the universe, I think he's still going to be better if he's healthy than what Rodon is. So give me Jacob deGrom and Brandon Nimmo. That's I'm going to take column A.
I'm a little shocked. Nah, I shouldn't say a little shocked, maybe because of the whole Nimmo discourse that we've had over the last couple of weeks. But for me, when I first saw it, I thought about it, and then I made an easy decision, and I said Nimmo and deGrom. And that's not because I'm the Nimmo guy here. It's more so the fact that, like what you just said before, by no means, if this was the actual case and you told me that I end up with Carlos Rodon and Trey Turner, I'm not going to be upset.
Yeah,
like, I'm not going to be like. Either way, I'm happy with either one of these outcomes. But if you're asking me to choose, I am picking deGrom Nimmo because I've said before that I do believe that Trey Turner has a higher ceiling than Brandon Nimmo. but I could argue stats a little bit more and say that Brandon Nimmo is, if you want to call it closer, is a little bit closer to Trey Turner as opposed to Jacob deGrom is here and Carlos Rodon is here. Like there's a bigger gap there. And you're going to say,
I agree with that.
Health, if you're going to, the whole thing is health. Like I just said, Carlos Rodon started 30 games once. And he wasn't, the prototypical bill of health in Chicago either. Now, when you sign players to deals like this, you are looking ahead when you sign someone because you think, well, I believe over the next 5 years that this player is going to project as this. And that's why you give that player X amount of years. That's why Jake's only getting in the 3-year range, potentially maybe a fourth if an option's kicked in. But I would much rather take the chance on Jacob deGrom than Carlos Rodon. So for me, it's really coming down to the pitching as opposed to the hitting side. Like you said before, Turner has a little bit more power, and we do need that power aspect. But if you're asking me to choose, I'm choosing deGrom over Rodon 10 times out of 10 with the risk of the injury from both ends. Because at the same time, when you're going to say risk of injury, you also have to say, well, if they're not injured, who are you picking? I think it's very clear who anybody would pick.
Yeah, it's a slam dunk. It's got to be Jacob deGrom. To me, I said legacy, but also like Jacob deGrom's just better. Objectively, he's better. If you're in the comments and you want to throw out your pick, column A, column B. Column A, of course, is Jacob deGrom and Brandon Nimmo. And column B is Carlos Rodon and Trey Turner. Like Ibby said, the rules are you can't mix and match, so you can only have one or the other. Let us know which one you want it to be. And if you're listening to this as an audio podcast and it's the day after, we're no longer live, you can find us on Twitter at Till Mets Do Us Part, and you can let us know. Maybe we'll even do a poll or something like that because I think it's pretty interesting stuff. Ibby, that said, there are some other curious situations around what the Mets can do and what the Mets should do and what the Mets. One of the things that people have brought up is the possibility of starting both Brett Baty and Francisco Alvarez. And I like both of those guys. I love Alvarez. I really, really like Baty. I just think that that's not going to happen. I don't think that a team with World Series winning aspirations, and you mentioned it before, Mets do these scenarios, it gets them to $347 million, which is why I've said their payroll is going to be around $350, and I haven't really budged from that because I think they need to do that. I don't see a scenario where both, I know we talked about this a little bit before, but it keeps getting floated out there and money becomes a thing. I still don't see a scenario where both of those guys are starting. Also, you have to factor in Escobar had a great run from the end of August, basically through all of September. And I don't think he needs to lose his starting job to a guy who hit like 180 over 100 at bats.
Yeah, I think it's, look, the way they build this team is going to be really indicative of how the playing time is going to be, spread out between those two. If you're asking me, I think there is a much easier, granted, I shouldn't say easier because you would have to eat money or just, turn someone into a bench player. Actually, no, because it would be eating money because you're not going to carry 3 catchers. I think there's an easier route to seeing Francisco Alvarez playing on a more consistent basis than Brett Baty. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that if you are truly trying to be a World Series contender, you don't want to put everything on those guys. Granted, I know the argument from a lot of people right now is, well, look at the Braves. They play their young guys and let them get out there and do this and that. Like, I understand that. I do. But at the same time, I just think that, from what we've seen so far, I think Alvarez makes a lot more sense to see more playing time. And I think working Baty in is the right move, not just rolling out and saying these are our 2 starters, because again, you are searching for that power. And if you have an option to get cheaper power somewhere to play third base potentially, and then turn, Baty into a little bit of a rover in terms of DH, third base, he's played a little bit of outfield as well. Like if you want to turn him into that type of thing, that makes more sense. I wouldn't just plug him in on day one and say, let's go. Look, if they both come out spring training and absolutely rip it, different story. If they turn into like a Pete Alonso and it's like you can't deny the guy, that's a different story. But you still, I think, have to build with the with the aspirations of, I want to have something here, and if they end up outplaying them, and there's more shine, odds are you're not signing unless you're getting like a Carlos Correa. You're not worried about the idea of the 1-year deal that you signed whoever to come in and fill in as a potential third baseman or second baseman or just a rover or whatever. You're not worried about that if Brett Baty's taking time because there's only a 1-year deal on that player. So I do think that you should attack power, cheap power in those spots, but I do believe that Francisco Alvarez has an easier shot at finding playing time as opposed to Brett Baty right now.
I agree. I also think that some of the situations you outlined for Baty are maybe not super detrimental, but potentially detrimental to his development. Playing some DH, playing some third, playing some left field. He's a left-handed bat. They have Daniel Vogelback, who's a left-handed bat off the bench. Mm-hmm. Maybe he's going to see a lot of time at DH, plus Escobar's a switch hitter. So how often are you really going to get Baty the meaningful at-bats? I just think there's a situation where he might find himself in AAA to start the season, whereas Alvarez, you can make the case that the James McCann situation is over and done with. You could also make the case that they want to free up some money. Yeah, they're probably going to have to eat about half of it, but that means that they free up half of it. So, you can trade him with some money to somewhere else. And then you can, if Alvarez is not ready to be your everyday catcher, well, Tomas Nido is still a really good catcher. Hell, he just won a Gold Glove, or whatever, So, did he win it, or was he a finalist? Did I screw that up? Finalist, excuse me. Finalist. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Finally, I thought after I said it, I was like, that seems wrong. But he's a finalist for the Gold Glove. Like, he's a great defender, and he's very comparable to what McCann offers you, where you could sit there and go, okay, Alvarez can catch a couple times a week. He can learn from a guy who's a good catcher in Tomas Nido, and then he can DH and provide you with some thump because you know that he has it because he is that kind of loud contact guy. I think there's just a bridge, even though he is technically blocked more because there are 2 catchers in front of him. And like you said, you're not going to carry 3. I just think there's an easier way to get Alvarez meaningful reps as a starting catcher / DH than there is for Baty. I think it's a little bit more convoluted there, especially if they miss out on certain players and now they start dipping into the Trey Turners and Carlos Correas of the world. I've said for a long time on this that if that situation plays out, you're looking at Baty as a possible trade candidate because, you're really getting crowded on the infield and you're going to be locked into a guy like Turner or Correa for a long time. So, all of that being said, Ibby, we're a little bit over an hour. So I think the best way to take this out is there anything we didn't get to that you want to talk about? Any kind of final thought, anything like that before we get out of here? And hopefully we rejoin the show next week where there's something more to talk about other than Hunter Renfroe being dealt for the 5th time in a row.
I have nothing in particular in terms of the Mets in general. I'm with you. I hope next week we get a little more movement. I do feel that there is going to be some sort of movement when it comes to these pitchers. Specifically when you're hearing more now, I think John Paul Morosi put something before when it came to Rodon, like you mentioned with the Rangers. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm not of the mindset that they're going to just sign every starting pitcher. Like, oh, they're going to get Rodon and DeGrom, and they're going to be on Verlander. It's like, I know they're going to spend money, but I don't think they're going to get everybody. So yeah, I do feel that we could see something in terms of Jacob DeGrom happening within the next 2 weeks, I'll say. I'm hoping it's a week, but I think we'll see something with DeGrom hopefully within the next week by the time we record. And I'm of the firm mindset that he is going to be coming back and being a Met. And I will stay on that one. So I think that is going to happen. But other than that, I have nothing else other than obviously happy Thanksgiving to all. Hope everyone enjoys their breaks if they are, their breaks from work and spending time with the family and all the good eats and enjoying the football and everything. And hopefully our New York Mets can provide us with something else to talk about over the next week or so.
That would be absolutely fantastic. I would love to see that just so that we have something more meaningful to break down. If not, we're going to be here anyway. Last week, a bit of an anomaly. I just had some crazy stuff going on with work and scheduling and things like that. I was
always
out of town. It's always been. My schedule's weird. I work on the road. It kind of sucks. But I will say it's now not this weekend, but the following weekend. So we will record again before it happens. But I do want to throw it out there. The 2022 Queens Baseball Convention is December 3rd. It runs from Saturday, December 3rd. It runs from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's not far from Citi Field for everybody who lives out that way. It's going to be at the 4 Points by Sheridan in Flushing. Tickets are still available, but it usually does sell out or get close to it. So if you haven't gotten tickets yet, you should. I'm going to be there. I will be hosting it for the second year in a row. I'm also going to be hosting a panel with Bartolo Colon, which I'm really looking forward to. So, but there's some great guests. Bartolo's going to be there. Hojo, Howard Johnson, who was on our show. So it'd be nice to like really meet Howard in person and kind of talk to him. And then R.A. Dickey, who I know a lot of people are looking forward to. So, all these guys are going to do panel discussions. They're also going to do some autograph signings. If you've never been to the Queens Baseball Convention, you should definitely check it out because it really is sort of the de facto fan fest for the Mets. And everybody, Dan and Keith, do a great job organizing this, and it goes beyond them. They've got a lot of people that work with them, but those two guys are kind of spearheading it. And, the 7 Line's usually there. There are people selling really great artwork, people or memorabilia collectors and things like that. There's a lot of exchange of that stuff. There's giveaways, there's food and drink and all that fun stuff. So, so I would check it out. It's a shameless plug because I'm going to be hosting it, but it's a great event. I went to it long before I ever hosted it. So you guys should definitely check it out. And I think that's a good way to end the show. And like Ibby said, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We hope that you have an unbelievably great day of family, football, and food. And we will see you guys next week. So John Sapanaro, Matt Ibby Ibanez, of course, Till Mets Do Us Part. If you missed any of the show, go ahead and watch it back on our YouTube channel, which is called Till Mets Do Us Part, or you can listen to the show wherever you get your podcasts starting tomorrow, courtesy of the Chop Sports Network. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.
And we're still live.